It starts with awareness. I have to see what I am making this mean. I have to understand the impact of that, and then I have to practice it. That's how this leadership training is different than any other leadership trainings that I have been part of.
Welcome to Bullhorns and Bullseyes, the podcast where precision meets promotion. I'm Tom Nixon.
And I'm Curtis Hayes.
We're thrilled to have you join us as we discuss the ever-evolving world of sales and marketing. Every week, Curtis and I bring our own specific experiences and expertise, along with a special guest who has stories to tell and lessons learned to share. We're here to help you with strategies that hit the mark and amplify the marketing. Before we kick off today's episode, make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay in the loop. And if you find our discussions on target, leave us a review. Your feedback means a lot to us. Now get ready for insights, tips, and conversations that will up your marketing game. It's Bullhorns and Bullseyes with Curtis Hayes and Tom Nixon. Let's ride. Welcome back, everyone, to the Double Dutch podcast. I'm teasing, of course, because we were doing a little bit of ideation, Curtis, before we went live. The word Double Dutch came out, and of course, I took that as a natural idea for a new podcast that I'm creating.
Which would be number 13?
Yeah,
Is that
14,
right?
yeah. Who's counting? So I'm looking for 2 Dutch co-hosts. So if you're out there and you want to start a new podcast, let me know. We've already got the branding halfway done. As we do for this podcast, Bullhorns and Bullseyes, Curtis, we're most often talking about marketing channels and strategies from the Bullhorns angle, which is one to many, as we've talked about, broadcast, advertise, PR, marketing in general, and then what you excel at, which is the Bullseyes and that specific targeting of personas, individuals, retargeting, remarketing, and all that stuff.
This
But
is
today
true.
we're not talking about that.
Yeah, I mean, we're, 30-ish episodes in, I think, in talking about those topics. I think we've covered them pretty in depth and a few of them a couple times over. So we've had some great guests and some good storytelling, and hopefully our audience has learned a lot.
Yep. And we have another great guest today, but we're going to take a little bit of a left turn content-wise, but it all comes back together and will have relevance. But why don't we introduce her so we can start the conversation forthwith? And somebody I met recently and was particularly taken with her approach to presentations. You might think of them as webinars, but online trainings. And the first thing the lasting thing, might not have been the first thing, the lasting thing I heard her say is, it's not just a PowerPoint. In fact, we don't even use PowerPoint because people have been PowerPointed to death. So let's hear why. Let's bring on Denise Roberts. She is a leadership training professional who is the creator of Playing to Win. Denise, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Tom, and thank you, Curtis. I'm happy to be here.
Good. Well, this is a live, unscripted conversation. We have a loose conversation map, but we are not bound by the rigors of scripts, talking points, PowerPoints. So tell me why, tell the rest of the listeners why you eschew PowerPoint as a training methodology, and in what effect do you think that has?
Well, okay, so there's death by PowerPoint. You guys have probably been in those kinds of webinars in the past. And to me, the problem is it's information overload. It's too much information, not enough application. So how we learn are 3 ways. And most people sell for the first 2. First, there's an awareness. I didn't know that. Now I know that. Okay, that makes sense. The second part of that is to map it into yourself, like, oh, I understand how that principle would work or not work. The third part of it, though, is, and you can take a test on those first 2. Did you get the principles? Yes, I answered and I got 100% on the test. Yay, you're trained. The problem, especially in leadership, is that the third leg of that 3-legged stool is proficiency. And we don't get proficiency by sitting in a webinar or an online training and PowerPoints. We get information, but we don't get application. So that's why all of our trainings are about you learn, and we only teach 1 or 2 points in each session. And then you go back and you apply, And then we come back and we talk about it, because the key to me in training is that the answers are usually in the room, and it's from the experience of other people. Someone might have had a very great experience from applying that principle. Someone else might have a very bad experience. And it's when the person has a bad experience, usually the other people in the group can start to help them with, had you tried this or could you do that? Versus just the facilitator, the trainer, whatever his name, no, you didn't do it right, or you got to do this. So the answers are usually in the room.
Interesting.
That's the difference.
Yeah, Curtis, it dawns on me, just as Denise was speaking, that you and I have collaborated on projects for which a number of times we've needed like a PowerPoint. And I ask you, well, do you have a Kaleidoscope branded PowerPoint? And you're always like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
So is it for the same reasons? I know it's not because you just haven't gotten around to it, or is it?
Well, it's funny because this week we actually did have Dan create a PowerPoint for a presentation that we're doing. No, that's not a training. That's where, we're presenting informational material, but we want to present it in a professional way. But oftentimes when I'm talking to clients, I think showing them is oftentimes better. So if I'm, say, pitching a prospect and I'm talking about services we provide and those types of things, I'll bring up a live dashboard. I'll bring up the back end of a website to show them something. I'm a visual person. I learn and retain by people showing me things, especially when it comes to technology. If I see somebody do it, I can repeat it and it helps me understand it. I don't retain by reading. That's just how my mind works. So that's why I prefer YouTube to see how to do things versus reading a manual. And I know there's a lot of other people that are that way. So that's just been my preference then, because that's how I learn and retain. I think that's just been my preference of how I try to explain things to, prospects or train existing clients, which we choose to usually record. Like if we're training an existing client, then we record that training where we're in the back end of a website or we're showing them a system of some sort and how to do something. We record that and then they have that to go back to visually and look at.
Yeah.
And I want to chime in here too. As because the world went digital, in the past, as a trainer, you'd be in a room with a flip chart or a whiteboard, and you would be drawing out or showing the visual. So you're discussing, so you're learning on all three levels. It's I'm hearing it, I'm seeing it, and then what we add to it is you go and apply it, and then we discuss it, and so it gets layered in. But so I'm not opposed to PowerPoints. What I'm opposed to is there's too much information in PowerPoints, not enough application.
Yeah, and what I was going to add is I think the point stands, Curtis, because what you want to show is something that's dynamic and live as opposed to static and flat.
Yeah.
And so I think that's much more immersive because you can see things move around and you can do what ifs and things that you can't do just on a static slide. So is that where, Denise, where you think most trainings fail to deliver because of the failure of that third piece, or what else do you think is lacking in traditional leadership trainings that people might be picturing in their minds as a boring PowerPoint and then an exam, a Quizlet at the end?
Great question, Tom. Here's if I go back to that analogy or those 3 points: awareness, understanding, and proficiency, is that if someone sends someone to training and they spend money and they spend time and they're away from the office and they're trained, and then they're not immediately like transformed, there is sometimes a disconnect or a disappointment. But if you set it up with, this is meant to be, we have to learn. We have to learn by doing. And we're doing it with real people. It's no different than when you learn to drive. You sat in class, right? You were told the laws. But if you didn't get in the car and drive it, no one's going to say, okay, now go on an expressway. You passed the test. You had to learn. You had to practice. You had to make mistakes. And I also believe that one of the biggest downfalls is that most people perceive it didn't work immediately as it failed versus it needed to be tweaked, or we could see what, and we debrief those. That's why when we come back, we talk about what worked, what didn't, what did you learn? And out of those three, the most important is what did you learn? And by the way, success is not a very good teacher. Usually we learn by trial and error. You guys are in marketing, right? It's called trial and error. What's an error?
Yeah.
Right? We didn't hit the mark. We didn't hit the bullseye. Right?
There you go. There you go. Give this woman a cowboy hat. She's on brand. Yeah. And I'm wondering, I guess this is my branding brain, Curtis, is I often tell clients, depending on what industry they're in and who their audience is, I tell if they're having trouble getting enrollment for their trainings or their webinars, I often suggest, how about not calling them webinars as a start?
Yeah.
Because that sounds like a drag. And I'm not going to any webinars, but I might go to a workshop or a facilitated conversation or something like that. So what are your thoughts on webinars just as a sort of nomenclature?
Well, from a marketing perspective, they've been used too much, right? There's so many in the B2B space, especially, SaaS or technology companies. You go to their website and, here's a list of recorded webinars you could watch or sign up for a webinar, a future webinar. I think we're tired of those. And we see it in the data from a marketing perspective. We don't get as many conversions from webinars. I think it's still useful if they're timely and the topic is relevant. And, I think for sure you can get people to sign up for a webinar. Do I like the idea of making it more immersive? Do I think people want to have a Q&A at the end and to make it, have parts of it be part of a discussion? Totally.
Yeah.
And I think people are going to learn a little bit more. They're going to have specific questions to ask. Funny enough, I actually have a training coming up with a young leaders group talking about AI. And they asked me specifically for a PowerPoint. I didn't really want to do one, but it's a company of about 800 employees. They have 100 young leaders, and they want me to talk to the young leaders on AI. And the presentation is going to be prompt for success. So I'm taking a little branding from you, Tom, and trying to brand my stuff. But it's all about prompting and how important prompting is with the chat systems. But they wanted a PowerPoint, so they had something to review. They needed something physical to review, the HR director, to approve my talk. So it was like forced into putting something together. But the majority of what I'm going to show, I'm going to pull up ChatGPT. I'm going to pull up these other tools and actually show them what they should be doing and actually teach them. And I've got 7 steps to making a good prompt. And we're going to do the exercise of actually doing those 7 steps, right?
Yeah.
So I agree 100%.
So Curtis, you mentioned young leaders, and I wanted to segue back to Denise. Denise, the way you and I met was through a mutual friend, an organization here in Michigan called MichBusiness. And they do a couple of different leadership training courses for their members. And one is for veteran leaders who have been in leadership for a while. And the other is called Jumpstart. That's the one that you facilitate. And that's for younger leaders. So what is unique about younger leaders? Totally makes sense that you wouldn't want them in the same room as the veterans, but what either their learning style, I'm sure the curriculum's different, but what do you find unique and then I'm guessing fulfilling about working with the younger emerging leaders?
Well, it's a great question. The younger leaders, first of all, are pretty eager to learn. Many of them have either just been promoted or they're in the process of being promoted. Some of them don't even have people reporting to them yet, but they know that they're going to have difficult conversations at some point. They know they're going to have to hire people. There's so much, so they're kind of a sponge. But one of the things we make very clear with the group is that this is a supportive applied learning community. And we go deep with what that means. And as we talked before, it's not just information, but it's about sharing your experiences. So good, bad, and ugly. And when you are willing to do that and share your experience, someone else can also has some feedback, right? And we encourage them to talk among the group. We put them in breakout rooms sometimes, so it's a little safer. I'll have a conversation with my partner, and then they come back, and when they talk, if you and I were in the room together, you would be asked to say, well, what did Denise say? And then I would be asked, what did Tom say? So it's easier usually to talk about someone else's situation. But now we open it up for the group, and we make a point with them. If you don't share or comment, you could be ripping someone else off. I mean, we had, if I can tell a quick story here, we just started a new cohort. And one of the questions, and we put them in a breakout room with this, one of the questions was, a leader you have had that inspired you, and tell us a story. Tell us a story. What inspired you about that? Well, the one person came back and talked about this leader, somebody in the company who reported to him, made a horrendous mistake that cost the company a lot of money, right? But what this leader did, and that's why it was so inspirational, is instead of berating them or firing them or whatever, or blaming them, this leader said, it's an our problem. Our process failed, or something happened here, not a you problem. And that they worked through this. The employee learned so much from the mistake, and the fact that, and it has an even happier ending, because I actually asked the group, how many of you thought that this person would be fired? And if you were the manager, you probably would have fired him, right? And they all were in agreement. But what came out of this is that this employee became one of their most stellar employees. So if they had just, off with his head, you're out of here. And that, as he told the story, you could see the other people going, oh, I hope I become a leader like that. So remember I said it starts with awareness. So the awareness that someone else even told you about, now you can learn from, versus my own personal awareness. So that's the part of supportive applied learning community. So that's how it all ties in.
Nice. Yeah. Curtis, you and I in prior lives have been in larger organizations than we're in now, because we're sort of this Team Lance model. We're all independent collaborators. But do you remember? You don't have to name names or anything, but can you look back at situations where things were maybe dysfunctional at this organization or another, and pinpoint it to leadership issues? I know I can.
Yeah. There isn't a single example. I think that no company is perfect. So I think that's the need for training and continuous training, because we're not perfect. We've mentioned on previous podcasts here, you need a mentor at different stages in your career, but you should have, coaching and mentorship for where you're at as you develop. Always somebody who's there. And if it's not somebody who's been through what you're going through, at least a peer who can hold you accountable and, be a support system for you and those types of things. But yeah, dysfunction is going to exist anywhere you go, I believe. And I think you need to, just need to understand that and manage it. Even in this Team Lance model, you're not going to escape it to some degree. Yeah. You're still working with people who inherently have faults. So
right.
There's going to be, you could reduce it by jumping ship and going to another company or doing something like that. But yeah, the grass isn't always greener on the other side.
Yeah.
How about you?
Well, yeah, the old saying that the fish rots from the head, right? And as the company grows, it tends to sprout heads. So
yeah,
my longest tenure at any one company started when there were 3 people. And so I looked to the 2 above me as my leaders. And as we grew, they looked to me then as the next generation of leaders. So I had a whole bunch of skills that I needed to learn. And then I had to split my time between doing the work and leading the team. And that became a huge challenge. So I wanted to empower some of these people to become leaders. So I don't have to lead everybody, right? So now I've got 5 leaders reporting to me. I'm supposed to be the leader, and I'm reporting to 2 leaders. So there's leadership everywhere. It's like the Girl Scouts would love this organization. We need leaders, right? So is this what part of the dynamic with emerging leaders? They're finding themselves somewhere in this hierarchy, either at the bottom, the middle, or eventually at the top, right?
Yeah. Well said. Yes.
Yep. So can you give us another example? I love storytelling. You said, can I tell a story? And we're both like, yes,
Oh,
yes, yes.
sure.
Another aha moment that you think. So if somebody's
Oh,
out there
I got a
listening,
bunch of
and they're
those.
okay, well, if you think of somebody out there who's maybe a senior leader who has somebody, emerging, so this person, we need to groom him or her because that's the next generation there. Give us an idea of an aha moment that might make them want to pick up the phone and call you and enroll in the next
Well,
class.
all right. This particular situation, it was right after COVID, and it was a, how everything was shut down. It was a service department in a dealership organization, and all of a sudden everybody could get their oil changed, and there was this floodgate of people. Now, the point we had just learned in the previous session was when people want to be seen, heard, and valued, and they want to be asked. So as you're leading people, they want to have input. And so here's this leader just inundated with, oh my gosh, it's my job. I'm the leader. I'm supposed to figure this out. How do I manage all these people without making them mad, without losing the revenue and all, it's like, But you remember hearing in the training, go ask the people who are on the front line. They might have a better suggestion, right?
Sounds familiar.
Let's just tell them what to do. So he comes back and he said, thank you for that, because I did go ask them. Not only did they have a better suggestion, they felt seen, heard, and valued. They felt empowered. They felt excited that they were asked, right? And he said they handled it better than I did, right? Because he was in reaction mode. They were in response mode, right? One is I got, right? And so it just became, this is when you see it's working so well. And in the past, he would have done, okay, command and control. We're out of control. You go here, you go there, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that. And people might have felt resentful, or I have a better way to do it, but he won't listen to me. And he went to them real quick and said, okay, guys, we've got this big long lineup. What are your suggestions? And then boom, 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 they just took over. And he was like, oh my God.
So this seems like this makes, if you're that sort of either middle leadership or senior leadership, and you send your junior leaders to this, isn't it making everyone's life so much easier? Like, you're kind of like,
yes,
your program does some of the training, not some of the training, but some of the leading for you, because it's teaching them how to lead.
Yes. And it's the trust. Okay. So we got to trust. Well, and one of the things we say in the training is you don't have to take the advice. As a matter of fact, I think I said before, we have some commitments and agreements that we make. And one of them is people can give you a contribution, they can make a suggestion. You don't have to accept it, but there is no what we call yeah butting. And when I say yeah butting, I mean, yeah, but that won't work here. Or yeah, but we tried that before. And so when they see it among themselves, that if Curtis gives me a suggestion, I go, that's not gonna work here. We tried that before. Then all of a sudden, Curtis feels dissed. He doesn't feel that his contribution was worth anything, or he's going to go the reverse. If he's like other people I've seen and go, wait, let me explain this. You didn't get it. This is what you need to do, Denise. Listen to me. I've been here. I bought that t-shirt. I built that factory, right? But, and so when they can see it among themselves, then they can also see how it applies to the other people, right? Because in Jumpstart, one of the key themes, and we start this day one, Jumpstart is about know you and then know them. So I need to know how I think and operate and I need to know how they think and operate. And so if I try to assume that because I'm gregarious and outgoing, that they want to be gregarious and outgoing, or they want information the way I want information, there is a disconnect. That's the biggest problem in any organization is, as you guys know, miscommunication, because somebody did something and somebody else made it mean something else. And now they act like what they made it mean is the real thing versus no, there's just a misunderstanding. Right. So these are all the things that keep getting woven in, and they see it unfold week after week after week as they go apply it, as they come back and discuss it. And then they start to apply it in their own lives, and they start to get more and more proficient. Right. And one last thing about that tell versus or ask versus tell. When they have to do have a difficult conversation with someone, right? One of the pieces in there is to ask the person, first of all, their take on it, but then also ask for, here's the impact it's had for the organization, and what do you think we should do? Versus, I think we need to write you up. What do you think we should do? And often the answer, and one of the people that were in a previous cohort said, I was ready to fire this guy. And when he came back with, well, this is what I need to do, and you need to check me that I do it. And he went, cool. It just made everything much easier for everyone. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a two-part question for Denise, if I may, Tom.
Yeah,
Sure.
That leads into this, made me think about something. So the first part is, is there a clear distinction between leadership and managing people? And the second part of that question is, do you have people who come into the leadership program and then determine through that, when they learn more about themselves, you talk about, like, do they then come to the conclusion that managing people isn't right for them? They still might be a leader, but can they be taught how to manage people, or are some people just not good at managing other people? Because I would say from my own personal experience, I was definitely a leader. I had a similar experience to Tom's experience that he shared. I was not good at managing people. And I read every single book there was on managing people. I was in leadership organizations trying to get trained, trying to get better at it. But at the end of the day, like, my strengths were in other areas. I'm a really good sidekick. I like to come alongside a manager or another leader and, like, just make the team perform better through my inputs into it. But I don't want to manage the people who are part of it. So, your thoughts on that distinction between managing people and leadership?
All right. And we blur them. There really is a difference. And leaders often are managing, right? It was funny because this just came up in, I'm in a book study and we're rereading 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And there was a part in there that said, they use the analogy of managers are the ones with the machete going through the jungle, right? Cutting away the jungle. And they're leading, or they're managing the people cutting the jungle. The leader is the one that goes, wrong jungle. So, and even every cohort I've had basically already knew this, because we talk about people leaving. We talk about how do you not have them exit, because how hard it is to hire people. We might as well let's grow the people we have. Let's work with the people we have. And their comment was, people don't leave their company, they leave their manager. Mm-hmm. Now, so to answer that first part of the question is, management often gets blurred with control. I need to control the situation, right? And I need to, and they think I need to control it and then lead it, right? And what none of us want to be controlled. So it's, how do I learn about you and what's important to Curtis and what he wants and what he aspires to do in this organization. And how do I use his strengths best in this organization? Because if I get you in the wrong fit, you're going to be upset. So if I can find that way, and we talk about how do my skills work with your skills? Because if I think fast and I operate fast, but I've got someone on my team who is methodical and detailed oriented, I want to go, hurry up. And they're going to go, you don't get me, you know?
Yeah.
So it's when we understand those about each other, then we can work inside of that. So I hope I answered the first part of that. What's the
Yeah, you did. It makes me think about then, your top selling sales rep, right? Who's outperforming everybody else. And so your first inclination as an organization is say, well, he should be the sales manager or she. But you just took your top performing salesperson who's generating the most revenue for you and put them into a position where they're not managing sales anymore. They're now managing people, but they might not be very good at managing people.
Mm-hmm.
But you could turn them into a leader. Well, now they're coaching their skills to other salespeople. They're not managing those people. They're not worrying about hiring, and firing, and performance reports, and all of those things that go along with it. But they're coaching and they're spending time and sharing what they're doing that's working. Right. And now that's using that person in a leadership role, but not necessarily managing people. Right.
I love it. Great. Curtis, did AI come up with that? Because that's brilliant.
Well, like I said, I read a lot of books.
He is AI.
I understand this all conceptually.
You've got augmented intelligence, not artificial. All right, Denise, last question for me is, I don't know that your program covers this, and maybe it does, but I'm thinking about the typical workforce now, if it's of any size, has 4 generations in it, all of which are different style of learners, communicators, collaborators, from baby boomers on down to whatever the Gen Z is. So
I know.
How is that changed, and have you molded any part of your program to adapt to it, to address those sort of generational conflicts and differences?
Well, it comes up in conversation. So it's not like we even put it in the program, but it's there. It's always there. If it's there, we're going to talk about it. So if there's a sense of my manager doesn't get me, or, because they're old or whatever. So it goes both ways. Both sides have to see that there's value here. And if the older generation sees the younger as a threat, then there's a problem. But if they can look at each other as there are strengths here, I would give all technology issues to the younger ones, right? I wouldn't try to do a YouTube video to figure out how to download and upload and edit the video, right? This person would try. Technology doesn't scare them. They thrive on it. But I don't have to see that as a threat. And the younger person needs to, or how they look at, again, it's all about the meaning we add to it, because there's always, our brain goes in, because we talk about conflict and we talk about how quickly, it's literally a nanosecond. Somebody says something. I have an emotional response to it. I then have a thought about it. Motion came before the thought. I have an emotional response, then I have a thought, and then I take an action. But it goes like that, right? And so when they can see it and they know they've done it, because I often say, if you don't get this in a work level, map it into your life from a personal level. Think about a family member or a spouse or something that you are engaged or involved with that just triggered you, right? Because it goes, oh, like that. So when they can see it, and I say it's never over. You can always go back and clean it up and apologize. But we get hijacked. So the same thing's true inside of a business with all these generations. The cool thing is, it could be a wonderful stew. right? Or it can be a mess. It's how you choose to look at it and take it. Because I believe in the world of how can we versus we can't because of. So if we've got four
Well,
generations instead of, because, one's going to badmouth the other, that's going to badmouth the other, because we make all these assumptions. It's back to that, right? I
mhm.
read somewhere that millennials are all into themselves because they're always taking selfies, right? Or whatever. It's just, again, it's you added the meaning. So if we can separate that, and that's why, even though we're giving content, it starts with awareness. I have to see what I am assuming or making this mean or not making it mean. So I have to see it first. Then I have to understand the impact of that. And then I have to practice it. So that's how this leadership training is different than any other leadership trainings that I have been part of, is because it
Right.
is very heavy on the application, not just the information.
Great. Good. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. Denise Roberts, the creator of Playing to Win. We'll link to your website, playtowintogether.com, as well as your LinkedIn. People can get to know you. But for the next cohort of your Jumpstart training program for MichBusiness, people can learn about that at MichBusiness.com. And when is the next one? It's coming up in September?
I believe it's October. Could be
October.
end of
Okay.
September, early October, but yeah.
So go to MichBusiness.com, look for Ignite Leadership Training, and both the Jumpstart program and the other program
Influence.
are,
Influence, yeah.
yep. Thank you so much. All right, Curtis. Well, good luck with that PowerPoint. If only you could find a way for have AI deliver the training for you. Wouldn't
We're
even need to
getting
be
there.
there.
We're getting there. It's going to phase
We're
me
getting
out.
there. Yeah. Well, until our robot overlords take us over, we will be back again next week with another episode of Bullhorns and Bullseyes.